Angela, and I am here at the Chicago Architecture Center in our ArcelorMittal Design Studio. And I'm excited to talk to you today about a topic that I think is really cool and fun, and I hope you do as well. The topic is interior design. Specifically, how do interior designers differ from architects? Now, when you think of the word or the title architect, what are some of the things that come to mind? What do you think about? Maybe you think about someone who designs skyscrapers. Maybe you think about someone who designs buildings, or you imagine in your mind somebody sitting at a drawing or a drafting table and sketching out plans, right? So if that's maybe what an architect is in your mind, what is an interior designer? Now, I worked as an interior designer for a really long time before I came to the Chicago Architecture Center. And one of the questions that I would get quite often when people would ask me that question is, aren't interior designers just people who pick out fluffy pillows and cool wall colors and paint? And isn't that kind of what you do? Well, not really. That could be a part of what an interior designer does. But really what an interior designer is much cooler than that, because we're kind of like detectives. It's our job to find out what a client needs, wants, and can afford in their space so that we can make appropriate recommendations on either the way the space is laid out, as far as maybe the walls and how the walls are divided up in a space, all the way down to the materials that we recommend. Now, specifically, we're going to focus on materials as one part of interior design today. And I'm standing here in front of our materials library because I want to talk to you a little bit about finishes. Now, an interior designer's material library, a library at a design firm, could be huge because there are literally millions and millions and millions of types of materials that designers can choose from. And did you know that in some firms, there's actually a person, it's their job to be a materials librarian? How cool is that? Somebody in charge of making sure that all of the materials stay organized, cataloged, and are up to date, so that when a designer goes to that particular library and pulls a sample of a material, they can feel confident knowing that it's exactly what they're looking for and exactly what the client is going to be able to get. So with materials, when I say that word, I've been saying that word a lot, the word materials, what do you think of? Look around the room that you're sitting in right now and tell me, what do you see? Start at the floor and sort of work your eyes all the way up to the ceiling. Do you see fabric on a sofa or a chair or maybe leather? Do you see wood or tile or carpeting on the floor? Paint colors on the wall? All of these different things are really important when you're talking about selecting materials. Now, remember back when I said that interior designers are kind of like detectives? I say that because it's really their job to uncover what the client needs. Because very, very rarely are interior designers designing for themselves. Their job is to design for other people. So you have to be really interested in what your client wants and needs and understand them really well, so that when you make recommendations, it makes sense to them, because it's important to them that they like the product, not necessarily maybe your style or your preferences as far as materials go. Now, before we dive into the materials library, I want to talk to you about two different kinds of interior design that a lot of designers focus on. One is residential design, meaning where you live, where people live. Maybe if it's not a home, it's an apartment building or a walk-up, a brownstone of some kind, a place where people live. The other kind of design is called commercial design. And that's focusing on much larger projects. Think of like a hospital or your school or a shopping center, a grocery store, a place where the public is going to come. And both of those kinds of design require different codes or guidelines that you need to follow in order to make appropriate material recommendations. So we're gonna come a little bit closer. We're gonna look at the materials library and we're gonna talk about some different finishes. I'll see you in just a second. So here we are standing in front of the materials library at the Chicago Architecture Center. And as you can see, each drawer is labeled with a different category. And this is just one way that we like to keep the materials organized for our own use. Now, again, like I mentioned a moment ago, our library is very, very small compared to the library at an architecture or interior design firm, but it illustrates nicely of all the different types of things that designers need to think about when designing a space. Now, remember those two types of design that I talked about a moment ago? Do you remember what they were called? Residential and commercial design. So specifically, let's take a look at some stone materials as I open up this drawer. And you can see all these fun colors and shapes and textures. And I want you to think about if you were designing maybe your school or a kitchen in a restaurant, your favorite restaurant that you like to go to. I want you to think about when you're doing a material selection. Would you want to research a material that maybe is really hard and holds up really well, can take a lot of use? Maybe you can cut right on it. It holds up to heat really, really well. Or would you pick something that maybe is a little bit more delicate, that requires a little bit more care? Now, again, you're always making appropriate recommendations for what your client wants. So even though we might think that bright blue sample is really super fun, this kind of product might be more appropriate for something like a bathroom in your home versus in a big commercial setting where it's going to take a lot of use and a lot of wear and tear. The same things are true when we talk about fabrics. And fabrics are so fun to talk about because there's all different kinds and shapes and patterns and colors. But the same rules apply. There are some fabrics that are better for chairs, like in a waiting room maybe at your dentist's office, versus the couch that you sit on at home. So it's important to think about, and it's important for designers and material librarians to read the tags of some of the samples that they are working with to make sure that what they're recommending is not only something that the client is going to love and they're going to want in their space, but something that's going to last over time and also be affordable. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today. Go out and find all the materials that you can find in your space and in your house and cut that part out. And have a great time learning about interior design in this week's workshop. Talk to you later.